Good morning, one and all, and welcome to our first meeting of the year on Wednesday, the 24th of January. Can we please stand for a karakia? Tonga, Tai, Iha, Tihuka, Hahahu, Tia, Mariora. Okay, before I get started, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of Norm Jews over the Christmas break. I had great pleasure working with Norm as a trustee of Ngāhui Whā National Marae for the last 4 years. It was good fun. It was always good to go there. He was such a strong local leader in the community, especially around East Christchurch and within the wider Maori community in Otatahi, Christchurch. Norm lived in Christchurch since 1961 when he moved from Wairoa as a 15-year-old boy to join the Maori Affairs Trade Training Scheme at Rahura Marae. Norm was a stalwart and founding member of the Otatahi Sports Club. He was also a life member. In the late 80s, Norm set up Ngā Matawaka, an urban Maori authority which provides education and health and social services and marae activities to urban Maori in Christchurch. In 2004, he took over the management of Ngāhui Whā Marae in Pages Road, where I'm a trustee of, and made significant operational and strategic decisions which have delivered really positive outcomes within the eastern suburbs and across wider Christchurch. Twice before he arrived, the marae had fallen into financial difficulties, and Norm fixed it. He played a key role in the response to the Christchurch earthquakes, with marae hosting up to 27 displaced organisations and supported their recovery work. Ngā Matawaka also provided support for the local community during COVID, and Norm was a staunch advocate in ensuring the whole community received access to care during those times. And the marae even became a distribution centre for COVID tests. From social housing and training programs to food banks, health campaigns, Norm always worked hard for the community. He was a man of the people. He would rather do something about it than talk about it. He was sadly missed. He will be sadly missed. Now, I'll just adding these wee bits. The first time I met Norm, I went down to the marae and asked, "Where is this bloke, Norm? I want to have a yarn to him." "Oh, he's down the back mowing the grass. He's out there doing it." You know? He would never ask someone to do something that he wouldn't do himself. He was very keen at getting people into work. He identified that if you were applying for a job, you will probably need a bank account, an IRD number, and probably a driver's licence. Next minute, 5 new cars arrive for driver training to take people through and get them a licence to help them get into work. So it was fantastic. Lastly, if people were upsetting Norm, he was very good at telling you in very short words telling the person the error of their ways in the politest possible manner. I love that. We miss it. Thank you. Can I have a moment of silence? Thank you very much. Okay, so moving along with apologies. We have no apologies today, but Councillor Goff is joining us via Zoom and Councillor Hunt will be a wee bit late, but he is on Zoom at the moment. Okay, I have received no declarations of interest, so we'll move on to public participation. I'd like to welcome Dr. Colin Merck and John Sullivan, who will speak on behalf of iNaturalist New Zealand to introduce their app and the City Nature Challenge. Welcome to the table. Good to see you.
Happy to move the apologies.
Yes, after we've just moved and seconded the apologies, here we are. I think it's Christmas already. So, sorry, thank you.
There are no apologies.
No apologies.
You This is what I've got to put up with. Okay, Colin, John. I apologise for Councillor Barber's little interruption.
This is an information item, drawing back curtain again on the iNatlas NZ Taki platform for recording natural history observations. You've got a flyer in front of you on how to do that. Showcases and enables people to engage with the city's great assets, its nature, its gardens, and its biodiversity. The local hub here is run by myself and John and a team of other executives, and it's the largest all-natural history recording platform in the world. It's part of that, with nearly 200 million observations of 500,000 species of plants, animals, fungi and microbes recorded by nearly 4 million people around the world. In the last 12 years, 0.85% of the whole New Zealand population has added 2.5 million of those observations of about 23,000 species. It's a site for discovery, learning nature and cultural connections, contributing to citizen science, biodata analysis, building community, and developing ecological literacy that, as we know, is urgently needed for better managing the planet. Each year, there is a global city nature challenge, which Ōtautahi Christchurch has participated in with about several hundred other cities around the world. And we've placed between 10th and 40th during those sort of slightly rivalry exercises. But we're especially grateful for the Christchurch City Council and the support it's given over those recent years. John is now going to pick up the story.
Sure, yeah, so the City Nature Challenge is happening this year again in the last 4 days of April, from Friday through Monday. It's a 4-day event where anybody can get on iNaturalist and find any species at all. And so we've had, I guess, something like 800 people so far involved. We started in 2019. We want it to be as big as we can this year. Since we started in 2019, Christchurch has been the showcase leading city throughout New Zealand and beating most of Australian cities, except for last year when Wellington beat us. And so we're keen to go big again this year and take the crown back. We've made lots of stuff too. So as people observe on iNaturalist, this is what we've got from the Christchurch area so far. So we're getting close to 300,000 observations, over 6,000 observers, over 7,000 species. And amongst those species are things that have never been seen in Christchurch before. We've had biosecurity incursions of new pests. We've had native species spreading back into the city and recovering and occupying the city again. We've had North Island species heading southwards as the climate warms and moving into Canterbury, and all this has been documented for the first time on the site. So it's a great way to get people involved, get them enthused about the nature of the city and showcase the city to the world.
Okay, so we see this is one of the aids for marketing Ōtautahi Christchurch as an eco-green city, place for citizens to enjoy and for visitors to enjoy and love. Building on other assets, natural assets like sanctuary propositions, the Christchurch 360 Trail, which itself has recorded through 2,500 people about 4,500 species. So a very large proportion of the total biodiversity of the city. So showcases this rich array of ecosystem types here to promote our place as a kind of culturally sensitive national park city concept, which I've raised before and something to revisit. Kia ora, you want to add?
No, that's good. Thank you for your support.
So,
and hopefully this year will be bigger than ever.
Yeah, so the City Nature Challenge coming up in the end of April.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. We have 1 minute for questions, and I'll let one. And Aaron, Councillor Kewen, please.
Yeah, this looks fantastic, Colin. One question, if it's interactive with the public, can you get misinformation on there, like people putting up the wrong species and who checks it and so on and so forth? How does that work?
That's an excellent question, yeah.
Nothing worse than learning the wrong thing.
No, that's right. So the way this works is, if I went back up, so you can see we've got 7,000 species and we've had 6,000 observers, but we've also had 4,600 identifiers. So there's another team of experts throughout the country and around the world that see the observations and correct things when mistakes get made and identify things that people don't know. So you can, if you don't know what something is, you just take a picture of it, and then there's a lively debate amongst experts about what that thing is. So it all gets corrected over time. Yep.
And it's an important difference from other AI-driven identification systems which don't have that verification component to the system. So we have these experts that come and view the observations and can verify or confirm or maybe suggest alternative names. So constant checking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Colin and John, for coming. Very,
Thank you.
very
You're welcome.
good.
Kia ora.
Very good. So next we got some deputations by appointment. The first one is the Yoldhurst Rural Residents Association. I'd like to now welcome Michelle and Sean from the association who are here to talk about item 10. Welcome to the table.
Thank you very much. You've just got me today.
Okay, no, it's fine.
Shauna, you can throw questions to the back there. Hi, team. Yes, I'm
We-
Michelle Clark.
We're
and I'm
not.
from
We
Yarra.
won't eat them. We're not scary.
Look, thank you very much for having me here today. I guess the purpose of talking to you is to ask the council to support the recommendation of option 5 when it comes to the Yoldhurst Memorial Hall. This will allow the community to complete basic maintenance on the memorial and to reopen the Yoldhurst Memorial Hall for community use. Some of you, I recognise the faces around the table, and I apologise for boring you with my my passion around the memorial and why the history of it's so important. But there are some new faces, and I think when making this decision, it's important that you do know the history. So in 1946, a committee was established with the purpose of building a memorial hall. The land was gifted by the Kyle family, which is a local family that's still situated in Yoldhurst. The community fundraised £600 and applied for the pound-for-pound subsidy for the grant for the memorial hall. And the fundraising included growing a fine crop of potatoes, apparently. In line with the government expectations at the time, the building itself is the memorial, not simply the plaques inside. It is understood that the condition of the grant of the hall had to be vested in the local authority to be given the appropriate guardianship of the building, which is why it sits with the council. The hall was opened in 1954 by Mr McAlpine, the Member of Parliament for Selwyn and the Minister of Railways, and he stated, "I think those who fought would appreciate this memorial, a useful addition to the amenities of the district." The hall has been used for weddings, dances, birthdays, community events, apparently Mike Moore's first kiss, I've heard, and was still in use in the 2010 and 2011 earthquakes. I'd also like to talk to you about the scope of works and the estimation. The restoration currently needed has been assessed by the council staff at approximately $2.3 million. This includes a full restoration, new furniture, fixtures and fittings. It is true that Yarra does not agree that this figure is needed to bring the hall to the standard it needs to be. The intention of the community is to restore the hall. We have no expectations to have a brand new facility provided, and in line with the heritage of the building, as recognised as the listing of the building, we want to take a conservation approach. A sustainable focus on the repair is not only the environmentally responsible thing to do, but also the right thing to do for the heritage of the hall, and of course the fiscally responsible thing to do also. As stated by heritage architect Tim Holmes in the report completed in only 2022, the building is in remarkable condition. It may not look like it on the outside, but inside it's a beaut. That's not his quote, that's mine. Tim has also offered his support for the Yarra with this project. If you remove the unnecessary expenditure of gutting and fully refurbishing the building, as detailed in the council staff proposal, the total costs are considerably reduced. And this then becomes in line with Yarra's submitted budgets. Our QS and engineer have reviewed the project once again and still have confidence with their figures. With access to donated goods and labour, the fundraising and grant contributions we believe we could apply for, we believe the hall can be restored and lifted to a functional standard fit to open at a very achievable cost. And contrary to the adverse commentary within the report on the capability and competence within our community and our committee, and the professionals that we've engaged in this process, we have actually had a significant amount of experience in this area. And I would encourage the council officers going forward to understand people's experiences before passing judgment. While we're absolutely committed to the hall, we do and we want to support option 5, there is still some clarity that we need to gain around the lease or the gifting of the hall. We've emailed these points through to council staff, and I won't go into detail for you here today. I'm sure you've got enough to go through. But to give you an idea of what they touch on, it's things like the ongoing lease arrangements, the rights of renewal, what the extensions for timeframes if required are needed to be. The independence of decision making from the council, excluding, of course, the consents process. We would like Yarra to be treated like any other community group and its opportunity for funding. Yarra would also like to work to its repair strategy and not be expected to implement the council's proposed scope of works. We would also like the council to consider the charging of the consent process. We believe that this is an opportunity for the council to support Yarra in not having to fully charge for this process. And while previously agreed with staff to be fair, we do ask that there's the removal of any reference to the MBS requirement of the building at 67%. We appreciate these might be typos in the report, but they do still remain. And we do have 2, last requests. We appreciate that even if this goes through, we will still be going through a bit of a process, and to ensure that future damage does not occur while we go through the process, we do ask that there is the removal of the wood that's been put across all of the windows on the hall so we can let some light in. We would also like the treatment of possible borer so we don't get any further damage to the hall as it's left. It's already been 13 years and we think we need to be able to do something to remove that if possible. I think we need to also remind everybody that there was a circular issued to the councils outlining the condition of the memorials. It was to be something vitally living, something from the very nature of its use and enjoyment will ever keep before us and the generations that follow us that freedom of life and personal expression for which our men and women fought and fell. The type of memorial which best embodies this is ideal is the community centre, where the people can gather for social, educational, cultural and recreational purposes. And I'll just leave you with Mr. McAlpine's statement from 1954. May I appeal to those whose responsibility it is to maintain this structure, and to those who make use of it, to respect it at all times and the significance for which it stands. So I thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Sorry, just turn the volume on.
thank you, Michelle, for coming in today and speaking to us. And I guess you'll be excited about the possibility of our decision today to move forward.
It's been a long time and we're really, really excited. And I guess we're really excited that if this goes through, we can actually get our community together to work on this project. So thank you for the support that we've had.
Very good. And hearing you talking about your capability in the community, you've got a number of professionals and tradespeople in the community who are more than capable of helping with this.
Without going through detail, absolutely, who have been on restoration projects, renovation projects of quite a commercial as well, as well as obviously the professionals we've engaged all of the way through.
Very good. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Henstock, please.
Thank you. Thank you for that. One of the matters that you mentioned you were seeking some clarity on was in relation to extension of timeframes. Can you just elaborate on that? Are you referring to the 5-year timeframe?
Yeah, and I guess it's the finer details, and I'm sure we can work through those together. I guess the reality is we've all been in natural disasters, we've all had things that happen. So what happens when we get to those points? And as we know, if we don't detail those things down, if the hall's at 95% and we're almost there, what happens? If it needs to go back to the council as per the terms, then what happens to the funds that the community have raised? All of those sorts of details.
Yep. Thank you.
No worries.
Councillor Cotter, please.
Thank you. And I know that the council is very reasonable about things like that. I'm assuming that would actually mean be interpreted that providing you have made decent progress within the 5 years, they won't be coming in and doing anything.
Absolutely, and we think it'll be very pragmatic. We just need to detail that down. Yeah.
Okay, but my question is, you mentioned the council scope of works.
Yes.
And are you in dispute with that, or?
So as we said, our approach, when you look at the 2 different figures, which is quite the conversation piece,
Yeah.
is our approach is a conservation approach. It is a heritage building. We don't want to go through and just strip out all of the bathrooms because you can and re-put them in. And I won't look. I'm not the expert on the building, but going through things like new windows, all of the details, the new flooring. We believe that you should actually restore the building as best you can, and so our QS has gone through and looked at that, and that's where our costings come
So
from.
does this mean that if you start work on this building, it triggers a resource consent that means that you have to bring it up to code, like double glazing and all those things?
No, so
Is that what
that's
you're talking about?
that's in the report of where we need to bring it, where it needs to sit. So our engineer believes, I won't go into the detail because I'm not the expert and I'd hate to speak inappropriately about where it sits with the building of the MBS today. What we're talking about is the fact that, look, we need to go through and get new carpet. We need to go through and, do things that's been sitting for 13 years.
What about things like disability access? Has it got that already?
Sorry, I
Because
knew it. Yeah.
those are things that can be really costly. Yeah. So anyway,
Yes.
you want to work through with council staff on where the agreement lies on that scope of works.
I think what we're saying ultimately, and again, please speak, Sean, is that we've gone through and said what the scope of work should be.
Yeah.
We've looked at what it needs to be, and we agree that if we take it on, we will hit the MBS standard as agreed by the council. I don't see why the council would need to go through and then specify what would need to happen in that space, and that's where we would like to get some agreement.
Okay.
Thank you. And we're running out of time. Councillor Fields, please.
Kia ora, Michelle. Thank you for that deputation. I represent Banks Peninsula, and what you're describing as your preferred option sounds remarkably like an amazing project that happened there regarding the Governor's Bay Jetty. Is that something, I assume that that's something that's well on your radar?
Yes, and it's probably, yes. We didn't want to bring that up today, but...
Thank you, Michelle.
No, not at all. We just didn't want to throw others.
Thank you, Michelle. I admire yours and your group's, your association's enthusiasm. Thank you very much for bringing that to us.
Thank you.
Now, while we're on the subject of the Yoldhurst Hall, I'm going to let Mike Mora, he would like to do a deputation as well. So, Mike, could come and give us a yarn, please.
He's not going to talk about the first kiss, is he?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to, but anyway, following from Michelle, I'm not going to take up too much of your time. But I do remember, fond memories from that hall, including my eldest daughter's wedding in that hall as well. So that was, quite, does mean, Speedway used to use it too, didn't they, before they had their liquor licence, and their club rooms used to use it after the Speedway on a Saturday night. But during our time on the community board, of course, we really concerned after post-earthquake to find out that the building hadn't been insured adequately. So then it just sort of went into rack and ruin, and our community board put pressure on to get it weatherproofed, and it's just stayed that way ever since. Breaks your heart when you go past that building and see it like it is. So I think finding out that this was on the agenda today, I thought I'd better come along and just say that our community board, because this report hasn't been to our community board yet, or not our community board, the community board. So it's just something that's really, really important. I don't want to take up any more of your time because Michelle said it all and she's absolutely spot on, and I'm just really excited to see that something can happen now, and that hall can go back to the community that owned it in the first place, and get on with the job. So just can't wait for that to happen. So I'm really pleased to see that it's on the agenda today. Very pleased with the recommendation, and hope it has a smooth transition through the process. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Mike. Because we've probably had all the questions that we had with Michelle, thanks for coming up.
Oh, thanks very much.
Okay. Next we have, like to hear from Joseph Fullerton from Restore Passenger Rail Group, who is here to talk about the impact of the Commonwealth Games proposal as part of item 15. Welcome.
Kia ora. Believe it or not, I'm not Joseph, but I am from Restore Passenger Rail, so I'm submitting on our behalf
Okay.
about the Commonwealth Games proposal. So I'd like the Mayor and councillors to cast their minds back to last month, when we were all sat in this very same room debating on whether or not to sell off publicly owned assets. And the proponents of that action were telling us that the City Council coffers were in such a dire state that we needed to sell out our city's vital infrastructure to private corporate interests in order to balance the books. Now, thankfully, Christchurch residents and the majority of councillors came together and we opposed that privatisation. We kept our assets and we did what was best for the average resident in Christchurch. And so I'm casting your mind back to that vote last December, because we're here today again debating another ridiculous proposition that would not benefit the average Christchurch resident. Hosting the Commonwealth Games. It's a costly, environmentally damaging project and one that would quite likely bankrupt our council. Last year's Games cost Birmingham Council and New Zealand $1.6 billion, and it bankrupted them. The cost for the 2030 Games to be held in Alberta, Canada, was estimated at a New Zealand $3.3 billion, and their council quite rightly withdrew from hosting because they knew that it would bankrupt them too. And so I'm here today wondering, at what point between the asset sales vote in December, when some councillors tried to convince us that we were so broke that we had to sell the family silver, did we acquire the cash to host an extravagant tea party and invite the entire Commonwealth? When exactly did we discover these unused billions of dollars to spend on this project? Were they down the back of the chair? Did we leave them in a coat pocket? Did we get lucky at the pokies? Because if we've got cash to splash, if we've got billions of dollars going unused, let me tell you, I know what it needs to be spent on. And it's not the Games. Reality check, we are in a climate crisis. We should be spending our money on public transport, on restoring forests and wetlands, on green spaces. And people are doing it tough in Otatahi right now. Use of food banks has rocketed. People are living on the streets, domestic violence shelters are full. I could easily dedicate the rest of my speech to rattling off all of the better causes that this budget could be going to. But I think you all actually know that. And I think the problem that has landed us at this point, where we're considering blowing our budget on these Games, is much bigger than just ignorance of the real issues facing our city. We've actually got a massive issue with priorities and mindset in this council to get to this point. Phil, you've stated publicly that this is a legacy goal for you, essentially a vanity project. And I want to speak very honestly and directly to you here, as well as to any councillors who harbour some idea about leaving a famous legacy in the city with flashy projects. That's not what this is about. That is not why you are a public servant. You shouldn't be in politics to be remembered, to be famous, not only because it's self-centred, but because it won't work. You're all local representatives in one city council, in a single city, in a huge world, and the history books won't likely remember you, and that's okay. They won't remember the anonymous people, the residents of Christchurch, who've come here to tell you that this Commonwealth Games shouldn't go ahead either. The legacy that you all leave is the state you leave our city in. If you make the right decisions here in this chamber, your legacy will live on in small ways in the projects that make our city that much better. In the safety and the happiness of kids cycling along by the river, in the hard-working mother who can use the rest of her pay on a treat instead of spending it on public transport, or the small business owner whose livelihood is that little bit much safer from extreme weather events because your actions in this chamber kept emissions lower and built a weather-resilient city. An extravagant vanity project isn't what our city needs right now. Leaders who prioritise their image and their ego over financial common sense aren't what our city needs right now. Please, let's not waste our precious time entertaining this project. Let's spend our budget on making our beautiful city better for the citizens who live here and leave a legacy that truly matters. Thank you.
Right. Okay, we have time for a few questions. Everyone seems to be happy. Thank you very much for your presentation. That was very good.
Thank you.
And I won't call you Joseph again.
all of your money around. Money. Billions and billions of your public dollars wasted on a vanity project.
Right. Next.
I think by definition that does make you famous.
Mr. Mayor, can we just get a clarification if that is environmentally sustainable money that's been thrown on the ground?
It's biodegradable.
Oh, not under the new recycling rules I was reading this morning.
Anyway, moving right along. Next, we'll hear from Jonty Coulson from the Canterbury University Climate Action Club, who will also speak about the Commonwealth Games proposal as part of Item 10. Welcome, Jonty.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Jonty aho. How do I top that? Kia ora, my name is Jonty Coulson and I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the University of Canterbury's Climate Action Club. Last March, approximately 10,000 students occupied the council. We had to coax our mayor out of hiding to talk to him about climate change. We left sticky notes with our hopes and our fears, sticky notes that the council has collected. The country had just been devastated by Cyclone Gabrielle. 11 people lost their lives. The climate crisis was undeniably here. 1 year later, let's have a look at some headlines from this summer in Christchurch. The coldest summer of the rest of my life. It's about to get hotter than normal. New Zealand clocks hottest day this summer. Officials warn of fire risk. Vegetation fire spreading rapidly. Blazes destroy houses. And nestled amongst these headlines, Mayor's wish list, Commonwealth Games 2030. Our mayor wants to bring the Commonwealth Games to Christchurch. In doing so, he is ignoring the pleas of 10,000 students to prioritise the climate crisis. Today, I'm here to deliver this message. We will not be ignored. The Birmingham Commonwealth Games in 2022 drew in athletes from all around the world, and you know what? Virtually all of them flew. From these flights alone, 14 million kilograms of CO2 were released into the atmosphere. That's the same as putting an extra 400,000 cars on the road for a year. And that's from the athletes alone. Let's consider now the coaches, the families, the crowds. And that was to England. Imagine the extra cost of flying all the way to New Zealand. In a world where rugby teams from Fiji are watching their pitches sink underwater, where swimmers from the Maldives can no longer train in the ocean that is so polluted, how can you justify this level of reckless emissions? And the recklessness does not stop there. Let's look at Birmingham again, a city with double Christchurch's population. Birmingham went bankrupt from hosting the Games, spending $2 billion on the Games. Let's look at Victoria, Australia, set to host the Commonwealth Games in 2026 with a population of 6 million taxpayers. They had to pull out after projected costs skyrocketed from $2.5 to $6 billion. And now 2030, with Alberta, Canada formally leading the bid for the Commonwealths. They pulled out. Why? Because of a projected cost of the Commonwealths of $3 billion. At 8 times our population, Alberta can't host these games. How the hell can we? Now let's think back to Phil Major's childhood, the 1974 Commonwealth Games, here in Christchurch, the games that started it all. By our mayor's own admission, the city went bankrupt as a result. It feels apt to mention those who forget the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat it. Now, I ask you all to consider, what could this money be better spent on? What could you do with all this money if you listened to the 10,000 students at your doorstep, if you read our sticky notes? Well, the Christchurch bus fleet alone has 250 buses. With the conservative estimate of $2 billion, we could double the size of this fleet, turn all these buses electric, and we could still run the network for 5 years fees-free. That's regular, free, zero-emission public transport for 5 years. How's that for a legacy? What about the $3 billion of the Alberta Games? Well, the Mass Rapid Transit Corridor is set to cost, $3 billion. What a coincidence. Instead of dumping this money on a vanity project for the council, we could invest in a sustainable transport solution that results in 3 times as much benefits once finished. Finally, let's look at the $6 billion cost of the Victoria Games. Imagine $6 billion worth of public investment, figures beyond our wildest dreams. That could fund 2,000 kilometres worth of safe, separated bike lanes. The Christchurch road network spans 2,439 kilometres. We could make the entire city safe to cycle. Ultimately, I ask you to remember that this is the coldest summer of the rest of all of our lives. As the world continues to heat, extreme weather events will become more and more likely. Let's consider one final sum. $14 billion. That was the amount of money it cost this country to respond to extreme weather events last year alone. You are decision makers for our communities. You have a responsibility to spend this money wisely. So councillors, make the right choice. Vote on behalf of 10,000 students, because if you don't, we will fight you every step of the way. Kia ora.
Right. Yep. So we've got time for some questions. Councillor McDonald.
Hey, thank you for coming in and presenting. It's always good to hear from people. I'm just trying to clarify, when you talk about the money we're going to spend, do you mean on the advice that we will commission Christchurch NZ to do? Or do you mean on something that may not happen?
Well, I think mainly I'm talking about making sure it doesn't happen. But frankly, any spending on the Commonwealth Games, past spending the time to vote no today, is a ridiculous waste of money and time that could better be spent on projects that actually further the community.
Okay, have we got any more questions? Nope. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right, so we have no petitions today, so I'll move on to the confirmation and receipt of previous minutes. Can I get a mover and seconder to confirm the open and PX minutes set out in items 5, 6 and 13, and to receive the open and PX committee minutes as set out in items 7, 8 and 12?
I have questions on item 12, PX audit and risk minutes.
So that means we'll go into PX for that.
Yeah, I sent them through.
That's right. If we have to, that's fine. That doesn't matter. So, so what do we do? The carry. So we'll.
And I've got one question on item 7.
Is that a PX one as well? No, it's not. Okay. Right. So we'll go down to.
You could do Yarni's now.
Yeah, we can do Yarni's one now. Councillor Johansson's one now because it's not a PX item, so fire away.
Yeah, it's a very simple question, but given the fact that we have experienced multiple additional COVID waves since we've reduced our COVID preparedness, I just wondered if the Health and Safety Wellbeing Committee has had any discussion around being prepared and mitigating the impact of COVID on our staff and on our city.
I can answer specifically. No, it's an ongoing thing. It's taken as it comes. So we have those restrictions as we had, but some of those were dictated to us by central government.
Sorry.
So it's just an awareness thing as we go forward. That's all I can say with regards to that.
I mean, there's obviously things that central government doesn't require us to do now, but there's things that we could do to take preventative approaches to the spread of COVID throughout our organisation. What's the best way to get those considered through this committee?
I could get
Is that question anything to do with what is in the minutes?
I can get that information.
It's what's
back
not
to
there
Okay.
that concerned me.
The head of the Health and Safety Committee, which is Councillor Scandrett, will get back to you on that. Is it okay? Righto, so because we've got item 12, which we will have to go into PX for, which is fine, can I get a mover and seconder then for 5, 6 and 7 now that we've talked about?
7.
Yeah. Councillor McDonald's happy to move. Councillor Cotter is happy to second. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you. So just bearing in mind, we will go into PX to talk about Councillor Templeton's question and for that one. Okay, so now we'll go down. Before moving on to our staff reports, can I please get a mover and seconder to include the supplementary item 15, the monthly Mayor's report? And Councillor McDonald is moving and Councillor Cotter is seconding. Right. So now we'll go on to the staff reports. The Christchurch Model Yacht Club. Right, I'm more than happy to move this. So I can't actually understand why it actually got to us. So Councillor Cotter is happy to second it. So I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. Carried. Brilliant. This is the way we want to carry on. Oh, did I jump over that, did I? Right. I read it, but I didn't do it. Yeah, so going back for the mover and seconder, which we had for the supplementary report. All those in favour? Against? Thank you, carried. Thank you, Sam. Right, here we are. Item 10, the Old Hurst Memorial Hall. Matthew, do you want to come and talk to us, please?
Kia ora.
No. Fire away, mate.
Well, thank you for having me. I presume everybody's read the report. Thank you for the deputations, Mike and Michelle. We received an email from the Yuletide Rural Residents Association. I didn't actually get it till this morning, but I believe it was sent yesterday. So that was good to have some of that information. I believe that was the email and the same information that was in the deputations. The report that you've got before you is not the final report. This is not the final chance that you will have to make the decision on this. Effectively, the hall is due to be scheduled as heritage. For heritage buildings, we need to go for a special consultative process to think around disposing. So the decision that you're making today is to consider gifting the hall to the Yuletide Rural Residents Association for $1, and we're going to consult on that through the long-term plan process, which ticks us the box for the special consultative process. Should the consultation results from that come back and everybody is in favour of that and you make the decision, and that's the point that you will then make the decision. So some of the things that have been raised today through the deputations, we've got time to work through some of that. So although they're important points that have been made, I don't think they're material to the decision that you're making today, which is, do you want to consider gifting it or don't you?
Okay, we're ready for questions. Right, Councillor Henstock, please, then Councillor Cotter, then Councillor Peters.
Thank you. We heard from our presenter Michelle today in respect of some of the concerns she had around some of the lease and some of the issues to discuss with councils. One in particular was in relation to the time frame, and particularly the 5-year term in which they're required to complete the works. I'm keen to understand whether the existing recommendation 5 in the report covers the eventuality that the time period may need to be extended in the event that they are making good progress but they're not quite there for the 5 years. Is it intended that that could be the case with the delegation and the authority that's been given to the manager of property consultancy?
The short answer is yes. The decision in front of you today is to put this in the LTP. The details of the lease arrangement will be the subject of the decision at the long-term plan. So we will work with the group to bring that to you when you're making the long-term plan decision. We would always be pragmatic about these things. If the group have made substantial progress towards restoration or bringing the hall up to code compliance, then we would obviously give them an extension in time to complete that. So it wouldn't be a black and white cut-off date. I think we would have to figure out how we're going to word that, but we would be practical and pragmatic. Yeah, definitely. And I think also I'll clarify, we're not going to impose the council's scope of works on the group. Our requirement will just be that they get that hall up and operating and they comply with all statutes, regulations and bylaws. It'll probably be something pretty simple in that regard. We're not going to impose a scope of work and go, you need to do these things.
Okay, excellent. Good question. Councillor Cotter.
Yeah, thank you. Kia ora, Angus. Nice to see you. Happy New Year, and Matt.
Nice.
With number 2 there, unilaterally, I'm not sure what that means, but my question is, when community groups take on projects like this, they often benefit from a one contact person in this organisation. So if this is agreed to in June, is it possible for them to have one person identified that they deal with to help them through this, like a liaison person in council? I mean, for instance, the Edgware Pool Group, they've got a wonderful Barry Woodland who's their first port of call, who's been incredibly helpful, and it just helps them to have that one person to go to. So can I just flag that? That would be really helpful for the group. And I know I can tell from the deputations that they've already got a really good relationship with council staff on this, but I'm just flagging that for awareness that it does help community groups if they've got that one person.
Yeah, it also helps us because there's a lot of hats the council wears,
Yes.
and it's best that we coordinate it through one person.
Yeah.
Barry put the hard work into this report. He's been working on this, so he's familiar with it. So it may well be Barry again, or we do have case managers who help people through consenting and development projects. So we could consider that as well. But we will establish one relationship
That's
manager.
great. So it's a case of if this community gets the go-ahead to do this, that we walk alongside them.
Yes.
We work together, but the community's putting in the hard yards. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peters, who I know is also bending over backwards to be the mover of this, so I'll just put that out there. Katie, thanks. So far away.
Thank you. Just picking up on a piece from Michelle's deputation in looking at item clause D, I think it is, in the resolution today around no cost to council. Would it be a possibility for us as a council to look at treating them like any other community group and have the ability to come and apply like any other community group could for this project to have the opportunity to access some funds that might have been used other ways on that premise to help with that refurbishment?
Matt just said that was based on the EOI that went out. There's two aspects to that. One is, does the council want to budget some money to help this group, and that would be part of the LTP decision you make at the end of the year. So I presume us and the group will come back to you if they think there's a shortfall and need assistance. So that would be a long-term plan decision. The other aspect to it is grant funding that normal community groups could avail themselves of. Yeah. So that would be the two decisions you need to consider when you're adopting the LTP: is how much funding or ability do you want to give this group? But that is a decision for May or June.
And to be clear, at this stage, there is no funding currently budgeted for this.
No, I mean, the main thing I'm hearing from the community groups, the group there is, access to strengthening community fund or heritage fund or a normal contestable fund that any other group would have access to. If they'd have ability to apply to those, then I think it's what they're asking for.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Johansson, please.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I was a little bit concerned over the resolutions C and D and E, and I think some of the deputations spoke to concerns with those. Is there a reason we need to put those in now rather than after we've done the formal consultation?
So is that 3C?
Well, it's just C1, C2, D and E. Sorry, 3. Yep. Sorry, you're right. Yep.
3C is effectively council's there's an earthquake-prone building notice on this building, which comes into effect in 2035, which says that the building must be repaired to a minimum of 34% or demolished. So 3C is kind of just a standard. Just let's be really clear. That's why we're making this decision. Code compliant is the same. It's not that the group think that they've got it to 34%. It's that it's at 34% and it is code compliant and it is available. So 3C, 1 and 2 deal to that. D, I think we've covered. That's at your decision. There's no money budgeted for future repair costs. When council made the decision previously and we went out as an EOI, it was at no future cost to council, but that clause can remain or can be removed.
Sorry, I guess what I'm trying to understand is, like, we heard from the deputation that there's a number of concerns with what we've got in terms of the proposal. I'm just trying to find a way that buys us more time to work those concerns through before we make the formal resolutions.
Yeah,
so I was wondering if we could do the consultation around the LTP, around the property disposal, and then when it comes back to us, then we've got the time to kind of put in those conditions rather than do it now.
I think it's important to retain those because you're going to go out and consult with the community, and the community needs to know the framework in which you're considering at this stage. So if you don't articulate that to the community, and essentially those issues are that they comply with statutes, bylaws and regulations, they bring this up to code, that the council is not going to budget additional money or funding towards the project, and if there's not substantial project progress or the building isn't brought up to code and operating, that we can claw it back. If you stay silent on that, the community's not going to know what to feed you back. So some members of the community might go through the LTP, yes, we want you to provide funding and budget money to the group, or along those lines. So I think this sets out a framework. You're not making a decision here. You're making a clear framework on which you're consulting.
Right, so people can make submissions to these conditions and we
Yes.
can then modify if depending on what we hear.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the second question was a bit similar to the idea of having a consenting person, but in the past, places like Mount Pleasant, one of the things that we did, I thought, quite good, was to also assign a sort of project type manager caseworker. And what we discovered was some of these community-led projects was that project management advice is equally as important at the start, rather than having to come in during the process and undo some decisions that may have been made that weren't so good. So I'm not saying that I don't have confidence in this group, but when we put Lee Butcher in to help people like the Mount Pleasant Community Centre, we got a much better outcome. So is there a capacity within the organisation to provide a little bit of support through a project manager type role as well?
Okay, so that's sorry, answer the question. Sorry.
Yes, there is. But
Great.
we will get someone appropriate to help.
Good on you.
Look, while I've got the microphone, clause 3E, there's a small typo in the reference there. Instead of 4C, it should be 3C.
Roger. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will have a seconder somewhere for this, everyone. Councillor Henstock, sorry. Yes, please. So is there any debate on this? Councillor Peters.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to see this decision that we're making here to go out and consult on this today before the council. It's been a long road to get us here. The community have had great patience in working with us as a community board and with councillors to get to this point, and to have the opportunity to look at the idea of empowering this community to step up and perform the magic that I know they can do. They've got great capability with the professionals they've got involved in their group, and they've got great tradespeople waiting in their community, just dying to get their hands into this hall and really give it the love it needs to bring it back to life and give it the vibrancy in the heart of this community that it so desperately needs to become again. It's had a massive history in this community, and to be able to give them the opportunity to have a go at this and get this asset in their community back to its former glory as a jewel in their community is, I think, absolutely fantastic. And I would hope that around the table today we'd have this ability to support them and empower them as a community to step up and work that magic for us and for our community out there, and get this back to the significant place that it is in the community now. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kewen.
Yeah, support the words of Councillor Peters. I would also like to mention former Councillor Jimmy Chen at this point, who's a very strong advocate for restoring and saving this building. Jimmy was very passionate about that, so he shouldn't be left out of the conversation, and he would be urging you all to support this today. A couple of things on that building. I've been lucky enough to go on it a couple of times since the quakes for tours of it. It is in very good conditions, a strange term to use. There's some very good examples of particular architecture that there's only a handful left in the entire country that were built at that time. This building, for better or worse, really had no money spent on it since it was built, which in a way is a great thing, because even the cost of cigarettes in the year they were selling them out of the slots at the front door is 12 cents, still written there in handwriting. So there's little bits of history and information in there that make this a very, very particular piece of not only our city's history, but our country's history. And longer term, once this is restored by the community, and like the great people of Governor's Bay did, a community leading it will cost the council or the people of Christchurch way less money. Once it's restored, it'll have an economic value as well, because I have no doubt, because of its architecture interior-wise, it will be used as a filming location for TV shows or movies that are made into the future here in Canterbury, because of the architecture that it does represent internally. So things like that do have an economic value for us longer term, not just for remembrance of someone's first kiss.
Very good. Councillor Cotter.
I'd just like to congratulate the community for taking this initiative and offering their energy and their talent, and look forward to the decision in June, and then look forward to the progress on the resulting wonderful building that you are intending to save. So congratulations. It's not going to be easy, but good on you.
Good all-round effort. With that, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. That is carried. Brilliant. Well done. So, that one there. We're moving down to our favourite that some people might be sitting here wanting to know. My Mayor's report. Now, a couple of things I will say. As far as the Commonwealth Games go concerned, I'm bringing this to Council because there has been a lot of discussion about Commonwealth Games bid. During the election, Winston Peters announced his support for the bid. This is simply asking staff for advice to come back with us on what venues we have, may need, accommodation costs, impacts such as environmental impacts. It is not asking for a formal business case, simply a council report based on staff knowledge, expertise and advice. This could be a great opportunity for our city, so we need independent advice to consider it properly. That advice may say it's a fizzer, but at least we've looked at it and have the information in front of us. If we don't ask, we won't know. That's all I'm proposing. There is no decision today. This is about getting the information so we can have an informed debate. I think it's a good time to ask because we celebrate 50 years of QE2, the 10th Commonwealth Games, this weekend. So that's why I'm putting that in my Mayor's report. Have we got any questions of anything else in the Mayor's report? Councillor Templeton.
Thanks. Yeah, I did email through a question a couple of days ago to the Office of the CE, just on what work would need to be deferred, asking for advice from staff and from Christchurch NZ as what work would need to be deferred to do this. We know that resources are quite tight at the moment for getting work done. So I haven't heard back.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm not aware, that question hasn't come to me and I'm not aware of it, but we'll get the question and get you the responses.
Yeah, you'd kind of need to know what work was going to be deferred to get this work done, to be able to make the decision to get this work done. And
You mean the report? Just the report?
Yeah, yes, the work that would then inform the report, for example.
Okay. So perhaps we can include that in the report that comes back to you if you pass the report. I can't provide that information today.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Harrison-Hunt and then Fields.
Kia ora, Mr. Mayor. Just a question around the costings. I couldn't find it. How much is the report going to cost council for CNZ to do the work to...
I'll ask my learned colleague, who is just a little bit busy at the moment. We'll come back to you on that. Councillor Fields.
Excuse me, Councillor.
Sorry.
In
Yeah, thank you,
relation to Councillor Templeton's question, it's not expected to defer any work. The date's looking at August, so it's after the LTP, and allowing that time for staff to prepare a council report, but not to impact on any other existing work programs. So it's to provide their professional view and information.
So we had a question recently over CNZ and us doing some work on the economic costs of climate change and adaptation, those kind of things. And we were told that there wasn't the resources to be able to do that without deferring other work. So I'm not quite sure how there would be, this wouldn't defer other work.
So it will be led by council, but with Christchurch NZ to provide their view, but not to lead it like in the same nature as that particular report, which is a Christchurch NZ-led piece.
Yeah, okay.
Supplementary to that.
Okay, so Tyler?
Yeah, sorry, cheers, Boyd. The question I have is around, with CNZ, how much do they charge usually for a report? Because obviously they're outside of us. We could easily do things internally, but CNZ will probably invoice us for work done, right?
I doubt not.
No, this would be an internal report, but we would ask them if they have any a view they want to submit to include in that report.
All right.
They don't charge us for the work they do on, say, all the work they do for bringing Sale GP here, so they wouldn't charge for that.
Couldn't this be a part of the events package that we're looking to potentially review?
This is just getting it underway to ask the question, is it possible? As I said in there, it could be a fizzer. They could come back and say it's an absolute fizzer. So,
meaning, couldn't it align with the events package works that they've actually bid for that $5 million? That's just my curiosity. That's the only reason why I'm asking you.
Okay, all right. Councillor Fields?
So you've indicated that New Zealand First have supported it. It's in their manifesto, and I guess they're a credible party of government, so they probably stand by their promises. But wouldn't we, before we even did this, wouldn't we want like a firm commitment from the government of like something in the order of $2 billion to even start even thinking about it? And have we asked that?
This is what I'm envisaging. This is the question that our staff will go out and ask. We have got, after the earthquakes, one hell of a lot of facilities here that the only thing that I can think that is a bit of grief is accommodation. So that's something that will be asked. I went and talked to Grant Robertson about this time last year, I suppose, the Minister of Finance, and threw it up in the air and said, what do you reckon? He said, if you're going to do this, please spread it out around either the whole of New Zealand or the whole of the South Island, so it's no burden on any particular place. We don't need a velodrome built here. We've got a perfectly good one in Invercargill, and there's one in Cambridge. We've got a rowing facility in Cambridge and at Ruatanara and Twizel. We don't need to go nuts and spend a fortune. All of the stuff that we've got, we've even still got the town hall, which has been done up, which had the weightlifting for the 1974 games in there then. So it's just go out. Is it at all possible? I'm sure they will ask the government if there's going to be any assistance in their building of the report, and just come back to us. And as I say, it could be a fizzer. But if we don't know, we won't know.
May I ask just to follow up to that then, please, Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Oh, okay. Yep.
In which case, and how then would it be a Christchurch Commonwealth Games?
I wonder if you need to reread what you said at the start, which is just getting staff advice on the feasibility of the Commonwealth Games.
Yes.
Have we missed something along the line?
New Zealand.
or if it's just
It's
political
just
shots,
get it
then
here.
it's probably not helpful.
As I have talked about long and hard, I am working hard, and everyone here is working hard to try and get Christchurch at the sporting and events capital of New Zealand. This is just one way of getting it. You're dead right. It's not necessarily called the Christchurch Commonwealth Games. The FIFA Women's World Cup was spread between Australia and New Zealand. I don't think it was called the New Zealand. It was just called the FIFA Women's World Cup. It couldn't be called just the Commonwealth Games. And we did very well. We did, as Christchurch did all right out of it. We had a couple of teams here who spent a bit of money in our fair city. The rest of the country did a wee bit better because they actually played games in their city. But we spread it around. And everyone had a bit of the take. But just get the report done and see if it's at all feasible. That's all I'm after. Councillor Johansson.
Great. Thank you. I just wanted to check who's responsible for bidding for the Commonwealth Games in terms of the city or the country?
We don't know that yet. That's what the report.
That's what the report will tell you, and I'm sure way back, and I'm actually going. There's one person still alive in the Commonwealth Games organising committee. He's a very, very keen guy, but. They'll start up an organising committee and that'll go from there. But this is the first step of years and years of work. And it, as I say, it might be a fizzer. So that's all I'm saying.
Can I just get clarification over why we're asking for the 2030 Commonwealth Games when the New Zealand Olympic Committee said that they're looking for New Zealand to host the 2034 Games?
Whatever the report comes back in. Because you've got to remember, the 2030 Games were 100 years of the Commonwealth Games, which did start in Canada. Now, they decided to pull out at the 11th hour to speak. They put it out there, and all of a sudden that spot became available. It's a bit like the one in Australia, 2026. It came available at the drop of a hat. No one knew. There is no way in the wild blue world that New Zealand or Christchurch could ever get into gear by 2026. Councillor Donovan, please. Yeah, I've got you, Sarah.
As part of the feasibility study, we'll be looking at whether we have some of our basic infrastructure repaired by that stage. I'm thinking things like Pages Road Bridge, which we still got quite a significant shortfall for, and also public transport, making sure that we're looking at transporting people around the city, how we're going to do that if we're deferring things like our cycleways. So.
I don't know where we're getting the information that we're deferring our cycleways because of a Commonwealth Games bid. I don't think you're right in what you're saying there.
Oh, the one out to the eastern suburbs, I think, is in the draft, sort of pre-draft for starting in FY29.
Mm-hmm.
So that won't be ready for some time.
Okay, what else we got? I have got Councillor Templeton, please.
Thanks. Just carrying on from earlier, when I was first elected, and then since then, there's been a lot of chat about trying to make sure that when we're asking staff for work, it's work that will be valuable going forward, that will really lead to some good outcomes because the resources are tight. And at that time, we were told that getting a report written for council and going through the system, gathering information, going through the system was about $5,000. Worth of sort of staff time and resources. Is that roughly the same these days, or is it more? I'm expecting it to be more expensive to get a report done these days.
We don't have up-to-date costings on that, but potentially for this one, we do have Christchurch NZ, who are our economic development agency, who are charged with looking at these. But it does cost time and resources, yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, did I get Councillor Scandrick, please?
Thank you. As already mentioned, the New Zealand Olympic Committee has looked at and thought about 2034. So would it not be optimal to say through Christchurch NZ to save our staff any work with regards to that we are open to being part of a New Zealand-wide Commonwealth Games, if that, to look at that if we were going to go forward with this, rather than doing it independently and then feeding back to the Olympic Committee. The Olympic Committee have already opened their eyes to the possibility of 2034, and I'm sure that they will be doing New Zealand-wide feasibility because, as we've heard and we know, a number of other cities have pulled out because of the cost, which is absolutely prohibitive. our population of our entire country is less than some of those cities that have pulled out. So would that not be the logical way to go forward?
We can put that in. Do you want? We can do an amendment to make it 2030, 2034. It does. All I'm doing is just throwing the net out and see what is it.
I'm just thinking about the process. Would the process not be better to ask CNZ to go via the New Zealand Olympic Committee, who have already expressed opening their eyes to the possibility of a New Zealand-wide 2034, rather than our staff pushing it, or CNZ pushing it, to say we are really open because we will have a new swimming pool, new diving. We've got a number of facilities that could be used if it were a New Zealand-wide. But that, as Councillor Field alluded to, it would be good to know through the New Zealand Olympic Committee if there were actually government funds that were going to be open to this, rather than
that will all be discussed in that report that they do. Councillor Peters.
Thank you. Good idea asking for a report. There's no harm in asking for information. I think hiding your heads under rocks is a silly idea. So well done on that. My question really comes around clause 2 and asking the neighbouring councils for regional contributions around the Te Kaha. And I'm wondering if we should be including Environment Canterbury in that list, seeing as how they are the regional council and would be a logical one to ask.
Yes, that's right. The reason, you're talking about Te Kaha now, the reason that I've put that in there for Te Kaha, there's been lots of chit-chat, informal chit-chat between me, different mayors, different seas, all sorts of things. And we get told, oh, why didn't we ask? Why didn't we do? This is a formal step in the ground, a formal, please, what do you think? They might say, get stuffed. They may well do that. I don't know. But if we don't get the ball rolling, they won't. But you're right, we can throw Environment Canterbury into that as well.
The Crown contribution represents the regional contribution.
It is too. Now, we've got to also remember that the taxpayers, the Crown contribution through 220 million plus 10 million for decontamination of the ground. Yep. Into us, they've given us the land for nothing. The ratepayers the taxpayers of New Zealand have contributed very well to us, and I'm very thankful for that. We're getting a lot of the cost paid for by everyone else. But there's been a lot of talk about why haven't we asked them? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do it? Let's ask them and see what they say. Thank you.
Can I just clarify, the process for Environment Canterbury or the Regional Council making a contribution is slightly different to district councils. So Environment Canterbury would have to consult the district councils about rating all the districts for it. So it's a different process than just including it in their LTP. They'd have to consult the other councils. But we can formally have discussions with them, but it's a slightly different process.
Yeah, but is it possible for us to add Environment Canterbury into that to make it a threesome rather than just the two?
I don't know. Well, I'll get back to that. Okay, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. The Mayor's proposals in the long-term plan is for quite substantial cuts to the events ecosystem funding, which will leave us with barely anything to bid for events. If we're going to have barely any money to bid for events, how can we be thinking about a Commonwealth Games bid?
So, just say that again.
The Mayor's proposals in the long-term plan
Yes.
are for scaling back the events ecosystem fund, which will leave us with barely anything to bid for events. So if we're planning and budgeting or not having money to bid for events, how can we be talking about this?
As I'm saying,
it's a report, but how can we be doing two at the same time?
As I'm saying, do a report, find out what the hell is going on. Have we got the facilities? The Deputy Prime Minister has said to me that he is keen to assist us if possible. So we need to investigate that avenue. I don't know how much the Crown would or could. They might find that they've just walked into a massive hole of no money and they go, whoa, things are a lot worse than what we thought. We can't possibly help you. But if we don't do a little bit of homework, it's all very well me prattling on, saying, oh, let's do this, let's do that. We've got to get people who are far more on the game as far as Commonwealth Games stuff or big events than me to do a report and come back to us.
But is this in the hope that the bid will cost $0? because we're currently budgeting on there not being money to bid for events. So are we doing this in the hope it'll cost $0?
I am hoping that we can use, it will still cost money, but we can use our facilities. A lot of the people over in Australia and Alberta and Birmingham and all those things, they went and spent zillions of dollars on brand new facilities. We have got a lot of fairly...
I'm talking about the bid itself, which will still have a dollar amount attached, and we're budgeting...
It's in relation to the long-term plan. I'm sure the Chief Executive can confirm that, so this would be 2030 or 2034. The reduction in funding at the moment is over the next 2-3 years as we work through that gap. But as you'll appreciate, as you'll understand, it's a 10-year budget, which we revise every 3 years, which would increase that events funding.
So bids for Commonwealth Games are done many years in advance, and you would still need money as part of that bid.
So I'm not sure what I'm not explaining. And it's not, no, it's,
well, if you're making a bid within the next 3 years, you would need funding within the next 3 years as part of that bid.
So just to be clear, the proposal is deferring, at the moment the proposal is to deferring the events funding to outer years. So if it's in the LTP with events funding, when the report comes back it could be allocated.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, now I've got, did you have, no, you're all good. Councillor Fields, then Councillor Johansson.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Phil. Like, I love the Commonwealth Games, eh? I do. I'm even wearing my original 1974 cufflinks, Commonwealth Games cufflinks. Even though I wasn't even alive then. I wasn't just. So I've got two questions. So first of all, why is there any compelling reason that we're having this discussion now, when we're in the middle of a hell of a contentious LTP, where we've signalled all sorts of terrible things to the city? Like, why are we having this conversation now? That's question one. And two, I'm not really picking up an appetite at all from the people of Christchurch for this. So why don't we just whack it in the LTP and see what they have to say about it?
Are you talking Commonwealth Games, or are you talking Te Kaha asking?
Sorry, I'm talking Commonwealth Games. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair comment.
So what's the compelling reason we have to discuss it now?
No, just to be clear, to put a proposal in the LTP, we would need to have a proposal with some costings. So
okay, that's fine. That's cool. That answers that. Thank you, Mary.
Yep.
But like, why are we discussing it right now? Like, what's the massive hurry?
If you don't start, you never get to the end of it. If you... Yeah, no, that's right.
But I mean, it's not like we haven't got enough going on at the moment. That's probably what...
We've got plenty going on. This is just something else to keep us on the boil. Right? Councillor Johansson, then Kewen.
So I just wanted to check, did you want to get into the Te Kaha now as well, or do you just prefer to keep it?
It seems to be bouncing from one to the other, so if you want to talk about Te Kaha, you feel free,
Sorry, that's
mate.
my fault.
No, that's right. Other people asked about Te Kaha.
Yeah, okay. I've just put in some amendments because we already have an outstanding action around engaging through the Mayoral Forum for a regional contribution. So I'm a little bit concerned about number 2 because it's only going to 2 of the councils, and we've got a Mayoral Forum that brings all the councils in Canterbury together to talk through this issue. So I'm just trying to understand how we can get progress, and I understand staff have said in terms of my amendments that they want to bring a report or a briefing back in March, but I'm just curious around timing, because if we need to set up a regional rate or a levy, we need to get into the LTP conversations with those councils or ECAN as soon as possible. So is there a way that we can get a fast-track action through the Mayoral Forum to get those councils to consider?
You could just add names and Sam will second it.
Okay, if you want to add that in, Sam will second it.
Well, I've already sent through some amendments, and Boyd has been sending stuff back. So we've kind of got an agreement around some amendments to my amendments, which Andre has seconded. But I just wanted to check with you in regards...
we were just signalling, sorry to cut you off, we were just signalling that we would include in the substantive your agreed amendments.
So those are on screen now. So rather than you actually having to put through an amendment and it being second, the Mayor and Sam are happy to just amend these.
Just put it in.
Yeah,
in the
Can I just, this question of central government's contribution, offsetting regional contributions, offsetting other people contributing, can I just get some sense of if we've had any discussions with local MPs or ministers around a sort of local members bill for a local levy like we have with the museum? Has there been any conversations with central government over that possibility? And if not, what would be the best way to get that to be considered?
You mean do a similar thing to what the Canterbury Museum has got?
Yeah, basically.
That is administered by, which is an act of government, which is administered by ECAN.
We used to have a Victory Park Board bill, for example, and we've had local members.
Not that I'm aware of, but we can actually look into that and come back with some advice around it.
Okay.
Okay. So hang on, we've got a few hands going here. Councillor Kewen, please.
Yeah, so I just want to ask you to be very clear, Mr. Mayor, because it would appear are you trying to be open and transparent about conversations you've had with, like, the Deputy Prime Minister over him raising the possibility of the Commonwealth Games, so you're putting it in the public domain so we get the information so we can make an informed decision as a council on the possibility or not possibility of ever hosting the coming together of many nations in the future. Is that what's going on here? Is this a form of openness and transparency?
You're absolutely correct.
Right, okay, so I just wanted to clarify that. This is just getting information. You're not looking to spend money other than Christchurch NZ are already budgeted to spend money over the next year on looking at proposals like this.
Christchurch NZ spend money, as you say, they spend money on Sale GP. They might spend some money.
They'll spend money on 5 things that do not go ahead.
Exactly. There'll be things that they throw effort into that doesn't happen. So that's what they do, and they're very good at it. So thank you.
Okay, so just clarifying that's what we're doing today. Just getting information.
Yep, and that's what I think I said at the start. Councillor Scandrick.
Yeah, thank you. Just looking at wording in number 3. Sorry, bounce from Te Kaha to this, but would it not be better to put the wording saying to offer Christchurch the options to the Olympic Committee for viability of their bid for the 2034 New Zealand Commonwealth Games? So it's not us pursuing?
The committee do it anyway. You could put 2030 or 34 in there if you wanted to.
At the moment, the wording is to Christchurch's viability to bid for the 2030 Commonwealth Games. That is totally different to saying that to work with or offer to the, or better wording. But it wouldn't be us that make the bid, though. It would be through the Olympic Committee.
Yeah, but when you're talking about bid is miles down the road.
I realise, but it's just getting the journey started on the correct foot, because the journey starts with the first step, and this one's stumbling. Just saying. Yep.
Okay. Councillor Donovan. Yeah, that'll be you.
I was just curious to know, because I see that Christchurch NZ is also making a bid for the International Masters Games in 2030. Do you think that might be an issue with capacity? We're looking for a RFQ for that. So I was just looking at the timing. So 2030, Christchurch NZ has put in an RFQ for the International Masters Games. Mm. And I think that attracts crowds of up to 25,000. Just wondering whether we think Christchurch NZ might have a challenge in sort of looking at both proposals at the same time.
You could be right when you say Christchurch NZ are very good at balancing a whole lot of things in the air at the same time. They're very good at it. They'll know which is good, which is bad. Is it no good for this year? Is it better for next year? They'll do all. That's what they're experts at. Yeah.
And if we're looking at 2 bids in the same year, whether that would actually be a good use of their time, capacity of our facilities.
This is what the report will bring all back to us. What will we do? Do we want a couple of seats?
Yeah.
what I'm getting here is that we pull out number 3 altogether. What do people think about that? Request, Christchurch NZ, advice on viability. Take it out. Everyone's disappointed with it, we'll take it out.
So there are a number of questions that need to be answered before you make a decision about this. So we are suggesting that you pull this, that the Mayor thinking of actually pulling this resolution now and explain and answering some of the questions before you have to make a decision on it. So get
Only asking for a report. What questions? Is it about funding the report?
So there's a lot of questions about funding the report, whether it should be 2030 and 2034.
We'll just put 2030 or 34, and then that's sorted.
Okay.
I think we should have a vote on this. I don't want to.
Okay, so we leave it in.
But maybe vote on it separately.
Yeah. You want to?
Okay.
James.
Righto. Councillor Goff, you have a question, bud. Where is he? Are you there, James? Okay.
His mic's moving, but there's no audio.
His mouth is moving.
Yeah, his mic is.
Your mouth is moving, James, but you're... I can't... Oh, there he is. Nope. Nope. No, I can't hear you. No. Okay. That's right. Don't worry about it. So where do we suggest now, Mary? Where are we going now?
Sorry, the feel of the room seems to be leave it in. Remove it.
I'll tell you what.
Your advisor thinks remove it.
I'm obviously moving it, and I've got a seconder in. Yeah, sorry, it seems very second. So we'll go into debate and just talk about it.
Would you like recommendation 3 struck?
No, the Mayor's decided to leave it in.
Okay. So have we got any debate? Who would like to be first? Councillor Cotter.
Okay, well, this is a tricky one. I'm just going to speak on the stadium one. That stadium one. I'm going to speak on the Commonwealth Games. I think that actually I'd like to look at this as an opportunity. This is a great opportunity for CNZ and City Council to actually, and the Greater South Island, to look at it, let's take a stock take of what we've got, where we're at, what our facilities are, what we have to offer, what infrastructure we have, what infrastructure we would need, and I think, as the Mayor alluded to, the big challenge would be accommodation. And all those things, if it was to occur, and we're not saying that it will, it could be a fizzer, but if it was to occur, we would be left with a greatly improved stock of infrastructure and public transport and housing. So that is something to bear in mind. The report will come back with information about the climate effects, and I think it's really good that people are concerned. I get really confused at this point now because I know that the Rolling Stones have just announced a world tour this year, believe it or not. I know. So what do we do? Do we think, well, do we not want overseas acts coming here at all? Do we not want anyone coming here? Foo Fighters tonight, I don't know how many young people are going to that. It's all about balance, and if we are going to have attract visitors to our country, we need to sort through that challenge, not shut the gate necessarily. I don't have the answers, but perhaps this is one way to get some answers. So for me, I'm not seeing any detriment in getting this report. I think we could actually get a lot of information in this report, and we will learn a lot about our city, our region, and what the South Island and New Zealand can offer. As far as Christchurch goes, Aotearoa, oh my goodness, this city is just getting so much incredible feedback. We are an accessible city, it's easy to get around, we've got these incredible facilities that will be, one would hope, ready by 2030, but at least 2034. So I don't see any harm in asking for this report, so I will be supporting the Mayor's recommendation today.
Councillor Barber, please.
Yeah, thanks for that. Look, I totally agree with Deputy Mayor Cotter. I think, we need to be aspirational. We need to look at these things in a really positive light and plan for the future. You know, if the Rolling Stones, given their advanced age, can consider coming on a world tour, I mean, they might not even be alive by the time it happens, but, you know, they've got to actually put those dates in the calendar and give it a go. So I think it's fantastic that we're seeking this information. We'll be able to make a decision one way or the other based on that information when we have it. But, yeah, let's be aspirational as a city and try and move forward, instead of shutting things down at every first sign of a little bit of fear or a little bit of opposition. Thank you.
Okay, we have Councillor Scandra.
Yeah, thank you. And Te Kaha's an arena, not a stadium, just correcting that. I've been doing that for 10 years, but we won't go there anyway.
Good work.
Look, it's kind of odd comparing the Commonwealth Games or even Olympic Games to a one-off concert by the Rolling Stones or the Foo Fighters or whatever. They are totally different beasts. But I would like to see a report of sorts, but my concern is I think we're looking at this the wrong way. To come out and say New Zealand Commonwealth Games via Council and CNZ through the New Zealand Olympic Committee would be the proper way, I believe, to go forward with this, to get some information, because they are the people that will be leading it. I just think the wording is wrong, and I think, as they've already identified, 2034, if other cities whose populations actually exceed New Zealand's have pulled out at the 2030, that's not for us to pick it up. The New Zealand Olympic Committee has already identified there could be an opportunity for a New Zealand-wide, and that would be a first in the Commonwealth Games, I believe, with you've got the velodrome down in Invercargill, right through to somewhere in the Northland for canoeing maybe, or something, to spread the joy throughout New Zealand would be the way to go. But I cannot support the wording as it is today, sorry.
Okay. Councillor McClellan.
Thanks. I checked in with Christchurch NZ yesterday just to make sure I kind of knew what we were buying as a council, and they mentioned that a full feasibility study would cost $100,000, which I was relieved to hear that that's not what's being proposed today. Nothing close to. They also mentioned that they actually have looked into this very subject in the past and could easily access that information from the shelf, essentially. So on that basis, I mean, I'm not entirely sure which way I'll vote, but I may abstain. I don't want to stand in the way of getting what will essentially be pretty cheap advice, which will tell us what we probably already know it's going to tell us, which is this is not viable, but it would be good to draw a line under the matter once and for all for a relatively low cost.
Thank you. Councillor Peters.
Thank you. I'm in favour of asking questions and getting a report to get the information we need to make an educated decision. I think that's what we sit around the table for. I'm not threatened at all by the fact that asking for a report is anything hugely significant. It's giving us a bit of information to be able to answer, is it at all a possibility? If it's not, fine. If it is, good on us for having a look and seeing if that it could be done or couldn't be done. Also like to speak to item 2 there. Pleased to see Environment Canterbury being added to that list, because it makes sense for a regional contribution to ask a regional council. I'm supportive of the Mayor's report today, and looking forward to seeing the communication to the neighbouring councils and the regional council and see what they have to say. As Mayor rightly says, they might say no, they might say yes. They might surprise us and say, look, we'll step up to the party and help out with the operational costs. But we've got, again, ask the question. If you don't ask the question, you're not going to get an answer. And same thing with the report for the Com Games is, if you don't ask for a few facts and figures and feasibilities, and is it even a dream that could be achieved, you'll never know. So it's good to get that report, and it'll be good to be able to progress or put that to bed, whichever. So,
okie dokie. Councillor Johansson.
Thank you. So I think it's really interesting to hear the conversation and the discussion about the Commonwealth Games bid. But I just want to start by saying, actually, I think the reality is that the Commonwealth Games, the big events model, is a munted model. It's about as munted as the munted infrastructure we've got in the east of the city. And what we need to do is actually focus on the things that are important to us now, given the significant impact that this would have. I think the timing is absolutely wrong. There are many other priorities that we have. Interestingly enough, nearly a year ago in April, the New Zealand Olympic Committee said it was interested in hosting the Games following the implementation of a new hosting model, which allows for more flexibility and innovative games. And what they talked about was being clear that the concept is not about a city, but about a nation. So they are going to do the work. We don't need to do it if you want to have the Commonwealth Games in New Zealand. But what's also interesting is they talked about the timing. And they said they need to make sure people have got the time to be really innovative and creative in preparing a feasibility study for 2034. So the idea that we could somehow get advice for a Commonwealth Games in 2030, nearly a year on from when the New Zealand Olympic Committee started looking at a feasibility for 2034, to me makes no sense at all. I like the Commonwealth Games, who doesn't? But the reality is that the idea that we should do this sooner than the New Zealand Olympic Committee can do it doesn't bode well for me when we've got other priorities that need to be addressed. There have been a number of things that people have talked to us in our city that we would like to do. For example, we've got live local music venues shutting down because we cannot provide a framework that supports the issue of having loud music in the inner city. I would much rather see Christchurch and Z focused on supporting that type of issue than this one. I think the reality is that we need more local events that are not as costly. The idea that cities compete to host these major events, as I said, is a completely munted model. It needs leadership from the New Zealand central government rather than us as a local city. This is well beyond our capacity to deliver, and I think it's far better that we allow them to do the work that they're already doing that can inform us for any conversation we may have about the future participation in a New Zealand Commonwealth game.
Okay, Councillor Templeton, then Moore.
Viability is about possibility. Is it possible for us to host the Commonwealth Games? And yes, it is probably possible given enough resources. But we need to be realistic, and the question is not could we, but should we host the Games? The answer is clearly no. Many cities larger than us have taken a look at hosting the Commonwealth Games in recent years. Cities with much bigger populations and better infrastructure already in place. They've taken a look and they've declined the opportunity because of the cost. The costs are not insignificant, and they are not limited to simply having some physical facilities in place. But hosting cities need to provide security, transportation, and a host of other expensive arrangements. The bid cost alone for the 2022 Games was £20 million. And I'm sure that we can find a much better use for $42 million in Otatahi. Rates are currently sitting at over 15% for next year, and this will pale into insignificance should we go ahead. Yes, we could spend money to improve our infrastructure for the Games and be left with better infrastructure. But you know what? We could spend that money on improving our infrastructure without the added cost of the Games anyway. Like Councillor Barber, I want to be aspirational, but I want to be aspirational for our future and not a nostalgic past. We heard a long list of potential projects from deputations earlier in the meeting, and frankly we should be funding our must-haves, our water infrastructure, transport system, waste reduction, climate mitigation and adaptation ahead of a 12-day sporting event. As a city, we've signed up to halve our carbon emissions by 2030, and that should be our priority. 12 large-scale international concerts. Let's bring in Taylor Swift. They'd be much cooler and easier to do, but a lot cheaper. And Councillor Moore is right. We aren't even budgeting enough money currently to bid for them. And we can't bid without the support of the New Zealand Olympic Committee, so any work that we do would be irrelevant, as they do not support a bid for 2030. Some will say that we're just asking for information, but we know that our staffing resources are stretched and that CNZ's budgets are too, and we're looking at defunding them. Work that we have previously work that we've previously asked for may have to be delayed, such as a review into our governance structure and potential committees, which I've already been told staff will struggle to do due to resourcing. And there's simply no point deferring work for a project we know we can't afford and shouldn't do. And let's be honest, we don't have a particularly good track record of signing up to expensive projects and expecting others to pay for them.
Thank you. So I've been delighted to hear a couple pick up on how great it is bringing events to Christchurch, but it is quite right. We're looking at deferring funding to literally bid for events to come to Christchurch. So I was extremely surprised to see this item come on the agenda. And the type of events that fund bids for are all proven to have a really strong economic benefit and return. The Commonwealth Games doesn't share that same return on the dollar spent. I can't get my head around that. The advice that we've received on what deferring events ecosystem fund, we're not allowed to talk about because there's commercial sensitivities involved, but I thought it was frankly quite devastating. So I've been really surprised to hear this. A bid would require money that we don't have. A bid does not come free. They do literally cost money. It's been cited that accommodation's an issue. 100% it would be. Unfortunately, the good old days of a billet system are gone. You could absolutely make this work if you could bring that back. But realistically, the committee has huge requirements on infrastructure, accommodation, so on and so forth. And this council has spent the last few years trying to make it harder to build housing. So the idea that we'd change our tune and say that high density housing units are fine for athletes but not the residents of Christchurch also makes little sense. We can't change our tune on housing now in the hope of bringing athletes here. We literally spent the last few years talking about how that kind of housing is not okay. The Commonwealth Games system in general, it is broken, or as Yanni's described it, is munted. Their requirements are simply way too high. The Commonwealth Games Committee, they need to change their tune. They need to completely revamp the Commonwealth Games to make it workable. That's where other cities aren't working. If they change their tune and revamp how they do things, then I'd probably support looking into a bid. But until that happens, there's a reason why countries aren't queuing up to bid. They are queuing up to stop their bids. I disagree with comments that there's no harm in getting advice, because yesterday we had a public briefing which talked about rate rises of potentially around 15%. And if the public see the headlines that we're staring down the barrel of a 15% rate rise, and then the next day they see that our council is exploring a bid for the Commonwealth Games, that will do harm to people who see that, who are struggling to pay their bills. People will feel fear. They will feel harm in those things. The time is not right. People are genuinely worried about paying their bills. We would love to see more events here. The best way to do that is not defer our events ecosystem fund, which literally funds bids for events here. But this headline will cause fear. It will cause harm when people see that. It will really genuinely upset a huge proportion, I believe majority of our city. Thank you.
Well, I could hardly have said that better myself. I definitely couldn't have said it better than you just said it, Councillor Moore. I think that you've just said everything that was kind of percolating in my head. I also, there's several comments made that I absolutely agree with. I couldn't agree with Councillor Scandrett more. I think that we're just doing this back to front. Like, it just feels like that we all know that an event like this couldn't go ahead without some serious government money anyway. So it's all very well to say, we're just getting a report for some information. Well, they're just going to come back to us and say, well, you need a couple of billion from the New Zealand government. And I just think that just sends all the wrong signals to everybody. A government that's really struggling with our national finances at the moment. A council that's just said yesterday that we're forecasting a 16% rate rise. Like, the optics of that are just abysmal. So for the fact that we're even considering this right now is just I just can't get my head around it, actually. I absolutely love the Commonwealth Games. I think it's a great event, and And you know, I mean, I'm aspirational for our city as well, but I mean, as aspirational, you know, trying to bring an event here that's well past its use by date, and as Sarah said, just trying to hark back to a nostalgic past that doesn't exist anymore. So I just don't even really want to go down this path at all, really.
Okay, Councillor Harrison Hunt.
Kia ora tātou. I completely support the sentiment of Councillor Moore and Councillor Fields and also Councillor Scandrett. But I wanted to add a couple of things, and one of the first things I wanted to talk about was the Economic Events Fund that CNZ are bidding for, and calling out that principality of hypocrisy. Too many times we're saying, oh, it's just a report, but many times councillors around this table have refused reports on certain projects that aren't aligned with them, particularly small pet projects. So if we're going to continue to do that, there is no surprise why the public call us hypocritical. We're all ashamed of it. And at times, it's really important to continue to call out things that are most likely not going to be feasible. We know this. Everyone knows this at this table. And with all respect to the Mayor, it's a great bid to be looking at. And I know that it's something that you're really passionate about. And I'm happy to support that in other ways, but in this way I cannot support. Reason being is there is potential climate impacts of which I don't want to be a part of. There are also many other things in regards to the future generational impacts, of which we've seen with Birmingham, who are going to be having to foot the bill for many, many years and try to get bailed out from the government, and also with the other cities that are going to be pulling out of this. So when we're talking about things like this, I challenge this council to actually support the CNZ Events Fund, and then maybe we can come back to this. If we're going to do that in principality, maybe support the CNZ Events Fund, and maybe then we'll relook it and revisit it. Put that as part of the bid. But until then, I cannot support this. I'm okay with supporting the others. But in regards to the bid for the Commonwealth Games, I cannot support it until we actually back what we say and do support economic events in the city, internationally and nationally, while also understanding the impacts that come with those. Kia ora.
Okay, right. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor Phil, for that. I think, look, these are always interesting discussions, and I think it's healthy in a democracy that we all respect actually other people's views, which is really useful in this. Look, I think actually the Mayor is the Mayor, and if he wants to call for a report from an organisation with nearly 3,000 staff, there's no reason in doing that. He's entitled to that. He's elected at large across the city, and I back him in doing that. I think probably two other things. You know, the reality is I just want to acknowledge actually, Phil, we have talked a lot about the Commonwealth Games, but actually the work around the stadium, you know, this has been underway before we even got to council. So actually formalising this today is, I think, actually a really useful tool. The reality is, I think everyone has said, and quite rightly, we've missed the bid on capital funding for the stadium, but I think as the Deputy Mayor called out quite rightly, actually, that wider Crown funding makes sense in that respect. What we need to be targeting is that operational funding every year, because actually wider Canterbury will benefit from that. I think formalising this is really good. It puts in place some processes that will work. And like I said, I just want to acknowledge you for bringing that to the table today. I just thought it was really interesting, nostalgic past. And I just want to say that before I finish, because I think that's going to be the election slogan for next year, because I've heard it twice today.
Thank you very much. Now, with that, I'm not Councillor Donovan. Yep. All right, wait.
Well, I was going to open with nostalgic past, but I won't anymore.
You got the memo.
Instead, I'll refer to Back to the Future, which is one of my favourite movies. And, you know, when we talk about, you know, looking to the future and being aspirational, I'm not quite sure why we're looking to the past. There are lots of things that we can be supporting as a city, and there's a lot of opportunities that we could be getting reports on. And as another councillor has acknowledged, we've actually asked for a few reports on things that would be quite aspirational, and this council's declined to do that. I think if we're going to be aspirational, I think we should be looking at what are the aspirations of the next few generations. We know that we, as Councillor Moore has commented on, we do have issues with housing our current population. So making accommodation for athletes does seem somewhat less of a priority than making some good decisions now. I think most of what I need to say is being said, but I also want to acknowledge Councillor Templeton's comments around, you know, looking at the impacts of where we should be spending our money in terms of climate change and mitigation. And as a council, we still haven't really faced up to the realities of this. And that's work that we should be prioritising now instead of these sort of fanciful dreams for the future. So I won't be supporting this today.
Okay. Right. So what we're going to do is take a 10-minute break to... Sorry, Aaron, I didn't see you down there, mate.
That's all right.
You're
I
in the
just
dark.
wanted to add a couple of bits. It has been an interesting debate, and to see where people sit on this. This is purely just asking for information on stuff that's being talked about in the public domain constantly. A number of people in this country would love to see the Commonwealth Games return to New Zealand, and today's vote is about letting their voice be heard to get that information. This is not committing to a bid. It's, can it be hosted by a city, by an entire island, or is it an entire country, and where would the money come from? The reason Victoria fell over is because rather than use all the facilities that are already in Victoria, in Melbourne, and some of the best facilities in the world, as an election bribe, the Premier went out and said to all of the regions, I'm going to build you all of these facilities. They'll be brand new. They'll be the greatest in the world. And they then couldn't afford them. So that's why those numbers skyrocketed so much. But everyone here would probably know that. There seems to be a couple of... So we would represent the people in this country that love sports and love the celebration of 52 nations coming together, representing a third of the globe's population. And coming together as nations is possibly a good thing right now in the world. And I have heard some attacks on the Commonwealth Games, and it's a thing of the past, so on and so forth today. And fair enough, that is potentially true. But to not host games, the Commonwealth Games, the Olympic Games, and other events that bring nations together will be to the world's detriment. And yes, flying has a carbon footprint, but also be aware that the carbon footprint of these things now exceeds flying. And so I'm looking forward to the protesters coming in, telling all of the councillors to close up their devices and stop using them so much. And those 10,000 kids with their, and I agree, post-it notes was a good idea because it didn't add to the carbon footprint, that these devices is now higher, that so the cloud and computer data centres has a higher carbon footprint. And even though, and I love the transition to other renewable energies, but the world's now spent $5 trillion and increased our usage of solar and wind farms by 2%. So we've spent a lot of money getting not very far. So we need to stick to getting what we do right and not just attack one thing like the world coming together to celebrate sports when we may or may not be able to afford it. But let's get the information, because that's what an informed council would do. And I agree, we should fight things like climate change and global pollution, because a percentage of our population want us to do that. So I do support that. But also a percentage of our population want us to play sport and enjoy the company of others from around the world and come together rather than fighting. So let's look at, is that feasible? Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We were having a few wee technical issues trying to hear James. Are you? I saw your picture. I saw your picture before, James. Yep. There's not James. G'day, bud. Can you hear us now? Okay. So what you just do up or down with? Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. So in the break, with the agreement from the mover, myself, and the seconder, Councillor McDonald, I've made a tweak to resolution number 3. Now, I'm not going to debate the living daylights out of this because we've all had it. Everyone knows where I stand. If it goes through and we get a report coming back and it's a fizzer, it's a fizzer. We've done the work and we know where we stand. But I would like to just reiterate that I did go and see Grant Robertson about this time last year, and just to save confusion to the press, he was a Deputy Prime Minister and I didn't realise that he was a Minister of Finance. And he did say then, if you want this to fly, my advice to you, Phil, is to have it as a New Zealand-wide one, because then everyone gets a bite of the apple and the money gets spread around. Whether Christchurch is the hub of it, who knows? The report will say all this. But this is up for the... after we get the report, and I say there's no decision today on whether we're going to do it, that's for sure. We get the report, and it will be a New Zealand Commonwealth Games, as Tyrone said. It's not a Christchurch one. So I have changed that around, and you can see it highlighted there. So with that, there's no use me prattling on forever because you know where I am. But we're looking well into the future. So it could be 2020, 2030, it could be 2034. Who knows? That's for people a lot cleverer than us to tell us. So with that, I will put the motion. All those in favour of my mayor's report, say...
You want separate?
You want to separate Te Kaha, because Te Kaha everyone was relatively happy with anyway. Okay, so I'll do 3 first. Okay. So is everyone happy with what I've put in there with myself and the seconder for number 3? All those in favour? Aye. Against? Division. The what?
Machine that means...
Thank you. All right, so recommendation number 3. Councillor Templeton.
No.
Councillor McClellan.
Yes.
Councillor McDonald.
Yes.
Councillor Johansson. Councillor Fields.
No.
Councillor Moore.
No.
Councillor Donovan.
No.
Councillor Coker. Councillor Peters.
Yes.
The Mayor.
Yes.
Councillor Scandrett.
Yes.
Councillor Barber.
Yes.
Councillor Kewen. Councillor Goff. Yes. Councillor Henstock.
Yes.
Councillor Harrison Hunt.
Kyle dear, no.
And Deputy Mayor Cotter.
Aye.
It's 10 for, 7 against. So it's carried.
Thank you. So that is carried. So now I do the whole lot. Do you want to see that? Okay. So now I will put the whole thing, and even though that does include number 3. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you. Carried. Yeah. So PX now. Yep. Okay, I'll just get my paperwork in the right place. Righto. We will need to go into PX.
Yes.
Yes. So I need someone to move that we go into PX. which is Sam, and I will second it, go into PX. All those in favour? All right, thank you. So we're now going into PX. We'll just wait for the room to be empty.